Next, we are going to talk about Demaryius Thomas and his CTE diagnosis. Um, Unfortunately, Demaryius Thomas did pass away. I believe it was in December of last year. However, we don't know the official cause of death yet, which is interesting. I'm not sure what the coroner or what's going on there. I don't want to speculate, but we do not know his official cause of death yet. But we did get a report coming out last week saying that Demaryius Thomas did have stage 2 CTE. Excuse me. First off, I want to start off by saying this. First off, rest in peace to DT. Condolences to his family, his friends, his loved ones, anyone involved in the situation. Terrible tragedy. He was a very, very good football player. He was a Super Bowl champion. He had some really good years with the Broncos. The guy was a very good player. And he retired somewhat early. I think it was 32, 33 years old. He had a pretty successful NFL career. And, it's sad that it ended up the way it did. And now we're talking about this topic now. The guy had stage 2 CTE. This is a topic that has really interested me for the past several years. When I was in high school and college, anytime we would do some sort of project, I always pick sports. And I remember one time for one of my classes that I took, we had to do a report on something, and I picked CTE because I thought it was, an interesting topics. This was around the time, that the movie with Will Smith came out, Concussion, which, some people, despite what you might think of the movie, I think there was some good parts in there. I thought it did a nice job of exploring a part of the NFL, the dark side, not necessarily the NFL, but the dark side of a player's life post playing, and then, what they go through, especially with Demaryius Thomas here and so many players before him, and unfortunately so many players after him, they suffer in silence. We look at some of the stuff that was talked about. We know some of the symptoms. I mean, it's very typical from concussions. First off, CTE does stand for chronic traumatic encephalopathy. If you do not know what that is, look it up. Basically, a degenerative brain disease. It can only be diagnosed once you pass away. So not only are these guys suffering, there's no treatment plan because we're very early. We're very early in the stages of looking at how this affects people and what really causes it. As we know, multiple hits, multiple head traumas to the head, whether it be football, whether it be UFC, mixed martial arts, professional wrestling, anything that deals with, the head being affected and hit multiple times, you could be a cause. You could be at risk for CT. And guys are suffering in silence. Boston University was the university that did the study on his brain. And they've done a lot of studies on former players and athletes' brains after their brain has been donated to science for research after they pass away. I do know that at some point in the past couple years, I'm not sure the exact time, Demaryius Thomas did get in a bad car accident. That resulted in him having a lot of seizures. Apparently his head was really hit hard on the windshield of the vehicle he was in. However that happened. So he started having a lot of seizures. His doctors and his family believe that that had a lot to do with it. He was showing signs of really suffering. If you watch the interview he did with, I believe it was on ESPN, his family, his parents, they did an interview on ESPN and they talked about it where, he was showing symptoms of headaches, really bad headaches. He was just confused. He just felt something was wrong with him inside, but he couldn't explain what it was. And it's just so terrible to think about that. To just have something going on with you and not being able to express or get the help that you need. because we just don't know that much about it. This has really just been brought to the forefront of the media's attention and the general public's attention the past 10 years. I mean, the movie Concussion really blew it up in terms of a mainstream, appeal. It's just been terrible. Now, I will say this, a lot of people have given the NFL a lot of crap over the past couple years for not taking player safety. It's their fault. It's this, it's that. You can't blame them 100%. I will say they definitely do have some blame there. The NFL is a product. It is an entertainment industry. They want their guys on the field so they can maximize potential and maximize profits and get more ratings and get more views. We understand that. And these players understand that. A lot of them understand that, hey, they're putting their bodies and their lives on the line for X amount of years to make as much money as possible and to play a sport that they love. Maybe not necessarily thinking about the long-term side effects of that later on down the road, because you're presented with such an incredible opportunity at the time. Taking a look at it, the NFL has done more in the past couple of years. They've been more strict about the concussion protocol. They've donated money to research for this. And I think that's something that's going to get better. It's something the NFL doesn't openly talk about because they know it's sort of in the background and it gets brought up every so often. And, it really creates a scary picture of what life can be like post your career. I mean, we've seen so many interviews, documentaries, reports on former players. You talk about Jack Webster, the center for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Excuse me, not Jack Webster, Mike Webster, the center for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He really was the first case that broke open. I mean, if you go and look up and do research, the stuff that guy was going through was just absolutely terrible post-NFL career, and they did research on his brain. And, I mean, it looked like the brain of a 80 or 90-year-old Alzheimer's patient. I mean, it was terrible. You look at Chris Benoit, the professional wrestler. They did a scan on his brain, and they looked at it. He had the brain of a 90 or 80-year-old patient with Alzheimer's. I mean, it's terrible. You look at this stuff and the things these guys go through, and the head trauma, the hits, the blows to the head. It's scary. And now that we know about this stuff, I would not be surprised, and I think it's already happened. You've seen a decrease in popularity of young kids and younger adults playing professional football, playing sports, especially football, that deal with contact to the head, because they see this now. 20, 30, 40 years ago, we didn't know about this. You had a concussion, suck it up, take some pills, and get back on the field. We got a game to play. Now, you see this stuff on the media, what could happen to you if you're, playing after your career, or you're just retired. You never know. I mean, that could be you. You could be suffering in silence, as many people are right now. So it is a very scary thing. And a lot of parents are letting their kids play football. I don't have kids, but in the future when I do, I love football. Do I know if I'm going to let my kids play? I don't know that, because you never know. And it's super early in this, but it's scary to think about. So, we'll see where this goes. Hopefully we do get an end result and see what the cause of death was for Demaryius Thomas. However, rest in peace to him. Rest in peace, and condolences to his family. And it's just terrible. The best thing that can come out of this is that they donated his brain for research. Maybe it can bring to light how bad the situation is and what we can do to possibly find some sort of treatment, find some sort of cure, something that can be helpful before you pass away. And it's terrible. So we will keep our updates on that, and condolences to his family. Rest in peace, Demaryius Thomas. You have been and will be missed.